strikes on energy infrastructure. Thousands of Israelis have taken to the streets to push for a renewed ceasefire and protest Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's efforts to consolidate power. The US Federal Reserve has kept interest rates steady as policymakers warned of rising economic uncertainty amid growing fears of tariff-fueled inflation. The man previously identified as a person of interest in the disappearance of missing Indian-American student Sudiksha Konanki in the Dominican Republic is headed home to the US. Joshua Reed was on his way home with his father after being detained there for nearly 2 weeks. The Philippines and its allies are trying to expand the Quad grouping of nations to include India and South Korea to counter China in the Indo-Pacific region. And Finland once again tops the World Happiness Report's rankings, followed by Denmark. The United States at number 24 earned its lowest ranking yet, but India stands at number 126. Pakistan, meanwhile, as per this report, ranks 108. Well, a big focus. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has agreed to a partial ceasefire with Russia, focused on energy and other civilian infrastructure. Now, Zelenskyy, who spoke after an hour-long phone call with US President Donald Trump, said it was a first step in what the Ukrainian leader said he hoped would be lasting peace more than 3 years after his country was actually invaded by Moscow. But it was his first known conversation between the two leaders after the explosive February showdown in the Oval Office and followed Trump's phone call with Putin on Tuesday. In fact, Trump and Zelensky's exchange marked a swift improvement in Washington-Kyiv relations, with the US president promising to help source air defense ammo for Ukraine, although you must note that Trump also floated the idea of the US owning Ukrainian power plants. In fact, many analysts point out that any possibility of a genuine ceasefire as far as this Russia-Ukraine war is concerned at this point can be ruled out. Some at this point also have a more positive outlook, but considering Washington-Kyiv relations are on the uptick and are on the mend, we will of course be keeping a close eye on all the developments. Zelenskyy has agreed to a partial ceasefire with Russia, focused specifically on energy and other civilian infrastructure. In fact, Trump and Zelenskyy spoke, and it was a first step in what the Ukrainian leader said he hoped would be lasting peace after 3 years of his country being invaded by Moscow. My colleague Vishal Vivek has been tracking all the finer details for us. He joins us over the phone line at the moment. Vishal, many point out that what Putin wants currently is a Russia-friendly Ukraine, essentially all of it. Where do things stand at the moment? Is this partial ceasefire, are people looking at it with an optimistic outlook?
Well, that remains to be seen, Parmeshwar. But at the moment, both the parties have agreed to a partial ceasefire. US, Ukraine, and Russia, all three have been on the same page for the first time ever since these negotiations started. So that is in some way a positive sign. But at the same time, there have been some reports that the attacks have been ongoing, even though these deals have been reached, these partial ceasefire deals have been reached. There have been attacks on energy infrastructure on both the countries. After Trump and Putin spoke, there had been reports of both the countries attacking each other's energy infrastructure. So these reports are still coming in, so it will take some time before we can, arrive at the conclusion that the partial ceasefire has actually taken effect, and there have been some positive signs. But so far, the war is still going on. The larger ceasefire is yet to be reached. There will be one more meeting later this week on Sunday in Saudi Arabia. Yes. So that will also give some clarity as to what can happen next. But the war is still ongoing, and people continue to die each day.
Thanks so much, Vishal, as always, for joining us with the latest. In fact, Russia and Ukraine said that they had each swapped 175 prisoners in one of the largest exchanges since the Russia full-scale invasion started 3 years ago. Well, with that, let's turn our attention now to the Dominican Republic. You must note that the parents of missing 20-year-old Indian student Sudiksha Konanki have asked the police in the Dominican Republic to declare her dead as per reports. According to a New York Post report, Ms. Konanki's family in a letter has said there is no foul play involved in her presumed death after she vanished from the beach in the early hours of the 6th of March. In fact, Sudiksha Konanki went missing while on vacation in the Dominican Republic. She was last seen on the 6th of March at the Rio Republic Resort, visuals of which are playing on the left side of your screens at the moment. The man along with her, who was previously identified as a person of interest in the disappearance of Ms. Konanki in the Dominican Republic, he is now headed home to the US. Joshua Reeb was actually on his way home with his father after being detained there for nearly 2 weeks. In other news, the US Federal Reserve kept interest rates steady as policymakers warned of rising economic uncertainty amid growing fears of tariff-fueled inflation. While Fed Chair Jerome Powell said the risk of a recession is not high, the central bank cut its GDP growth projections for 2025. But Mr. Powell's thread-the-needle approach, he said tariffs will actually have only a transitory effect on inflation and forecast 2 rate cuts this year, was welcomed by investors. However, you must note that some experts argue that the persistent uncertainty shows how the Fed is as lost in the wilderness as the rest of us, trying to decipher the continual shifts in the economic policy from 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Just listen in to what the Fed chair had to say.
If you look at outside forecasts, forecasters have generally raised, a number of them have raised their possibility of a recession somewhat, but still at relatively moderate levels, still in the region of the traditional, because they were extremely low. If you go back 2 months, people were saying that the likelihood of a recession was extremely low. So has moved up, but it's not high.
Well, the other crucial story we're tracking, the Ministry of External Affairs has said it is concerned over the current situation in Gaza and also called in for humanitarian assistance after Israel's airstrikes killed over 400 people there. The Ministry of External Affairs, in its statement, has said that we are concerned at the situation in Gaza. It's important that all hostages are released. In fact, the statement further adds that we also call for supply of humanitarian assistance to the people of Gaza to be sustained. That's the latest reaction coming in from the Ministry of External Affairs, which has clearly said it's concerned over the current situation in Gaza and called for humanitarian assistance after Israel's airstrikes killed over 400 people there. By the way, the Israeli military has launched targeted ground activities in Gaza, partially recapturing a key area in the territory, a day after launching an aerial bombardment of the strip that shattered the 2-month-old ceasefire with Hamas. Now, this operation began a day after Israel renewed its bombardment of Gaza, shattering that fragile ceasefire with Hamas. Israel accused Hamas of repeatedly refusing to release hostages and rejecting offers from mediators. Hamas, in turn, accused Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of unilaterally appending the truce and putting hostages at risk of an unknown fate. My colleague Vishal has been tracking the latest developments for us. He joins us live at the moment. Vishal, take us through the latest developments.
So as you mentioned, Parmeshwar, there had been at least 400 deaths recorded ever since these fresh strikes in Gaza started about 2 days ago. So the ceasefire in the enclave has collapsed. Both the parties were not able to reach an agreement. There had been a lot of back and forth as far as the negotiations are concerned in Qatar. So technically the ceasefire had already ended on March 1. That's when the first phase of the ceasefire had ended. But there had been some kind of limbo as far as the attacks are concerned. The negotiations were going on, but those talks collapsed, and now full-blown attack has happened from Israeli side to the Gaza side, and ground operations have begun. Israel has now recaptured the key Netzarim corridor. So a lot of things remain to be seen, but so far the strikes are continuing to happen. The ground operation has begun again. So the embattled territory that had seen a brief period of peace for about 45 to 50 days is again back to the old days of, everyday bombings and children and women being killed indiscriminately. And Israel has been saying that it's continuing to attack Hamas targets, but it's no secret that even women and children are, every day being killed on a daily basis. So all of that will come into the picture when the second phase of the ceasefire is discussed, and that's a larger question as to when that discussion actually happens. Because so far there's no indication as to that the second phase of the ceasefire is actually going to happen or not.
Vishal, as always, thanks so much for joining us with the lowdown. In fact, on the latest strikes against Hamas, Israeli ambassador to India, Reuven Asser, says diplomacy has failed, further adding that's why they've renewed their military pressure to create a situation in which Hamas changes their mind or faces defeat. Listen in to what he told NDTV.
It's a tough time that we are speaking on, but one of the first things I want to ask you is that both parties are accusing the other of breaking the ceasefire, which is why you've seen those attacks that have taken place. What's the rationale for Israel to attack at a time which is also the holy month of Ramzan, where the attacks have taken place in the last 36 hours?
Well, Gauri, as you probably remember, we agreed to a 42-day temporary ceasefire in order to negotiate the resolution of this conflict, which means bringing back our hostages and make sure that Hamas cannot rearm and regroup and continue controlling the Gaza Strip. Unfortunately, Hamas has rejected the proposals of the American mediator time and again and has stopped releasing hostages. We had to go back to military pressure. This is something that is also backed by the United States, because if we cannot achieve this achievement diplomatically, we have to do it militarily.
Okay, so but again, the accusation has been that there was no rejection by Hamas, because these attacks have been condemned by countries the world over. And what's the rationale for continuing it? And more importantly, how long are you going to continue these attacks?
Well, first of all, it is a fact that they rejected the American proposals because the American administration has stated that. So we are fully coordinated with our American friends, and condemnations cannot replace the fact that we have a terrorist organization in the Gaza Strip that is not only holding hostages from Israel, they are holding hostage the entire Palestinian population. They are taking the humanitarian aid that the world is sending, selling it to the population, blending into the population, and trying to extort a surrender from Israel. This is not going to happen. It's ridiculous. So what we expect from the international community is to put pressure on Hamas and create peace in our region through a diplomatic process that will take the top brass of Hamas out of Gaza, will give hope to the Palestinian people with a new moderate leadership that can actually allow real assistance from the world in reconstruction of the Gaza Strip, in a better future for Palestinian people. This is what is the common interest. So whoever says that we shouldn't use military power basically says that we have to surrender to a terrorist organization that will continue, having a grip on Gaza forever. This cannot be acceptable.
Well, let's switch tracks now. Bill Gates, the former Microsoft CEO and co-chair of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, met Union Minister J.P. Nadda in Parliament, discussing India's significant advancements, whether it's in healthcare, also future collaborations between the foundation and the country. Bill Gates has said India is not just building for itself, it's creating solutions that have the potential to transform global health and development. Mr. Gates, in fact, referred to India's digital ecosystem, inclusive economic growth, and tech breakthroughs as a model for the world. The Microsoft founder visited Parliament. He met several key lawmakers besides J.P. Nadda, and he also lauded India's healthcare sector in great detail. Well, in other news, for the 8th year in a row, Finland has taken the #1 spot on the World Happiness Report's list of the happiest countries. Denmark, Iceland, Norway, and Sweden also made the top 10. Many people will tell you that the Nordic countries dominating this list should not come as a surprise, but you must note that the World Happiness Report ranks countries according to self-assessed life evaluations averaged over the year 2022 till 2024. The Wellbeing Research Centre at the University of Oxford which publishes this report, says that the report considers the following 6 variables in more than 130 countries ranked in this report. These variables are GDP per capita, social support, health life expectancy, freedom, generosity, and freedom of corruption. Now, you must note that the United States at number 24 earned its lowest ranking yet in the report, while India ranked 126th out of 143 nations in this World Happiness Report. Pakistan, meanwhile, as per this report, ranks 108. Slipping into a very short commercial break. Back in a moment. Do stay tuned.
सैल्यूट है जी। आप देश की रक्षा में जान लगा देते हैं
और आप
घर घर में तार लगाते हैं जी। ई बीम टेक्नोलॉजी से बनी, न जले न पिघले, सबकी रक्षा करे।
हम सरहद पर लोगों की रक्षा करते हैं और आप देश के अंदर। सैल्यूट तो बनता है जी।
अपार अणुशक्ति फायर प्रोटेक्ट वायर, अपार देश का तार।
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं, ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। तो आज ही अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक करें फ्री में पैसाबाजार.com पर। लोन की जरूरत कभी भी किसी को भी पड़ सकती है।
ठीक से एक्टिंग नहीं।
पैसाबाजार.com।
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion, where opinions collide but facts prevail, where stories unfold with insights and trust. When the noise ends, the last word begins.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं, ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पर डिपेंड करता है। आज ही जाइए पैसाबाजार.com पर और अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक कीजिए फ्री में, क्योंकि लोन की जरूरत किसी को भी कभी भी पड़ सकती है।
चल एक्टिंग थोड़ा भेल बनो।
पैसाबाजार.com।
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं, ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। तो आज ही पैसाबाजार.com पर जाइए और अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक कीजिए फ्री में, क्योंकि लोन की जरूरत कभी भी किसी को भी पड़ सकती है।
बस एक्टिंग करा लो इनसे।
पैसाबाजार.com, क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक, आदत अच्छी है।
One of your primary concerns and one of your primary responsibilities is to deal with the threat of terror. And at the moment, we see a great deal of that out of Yemen. We see attacks on shipping taking place, and we see the United States being very much on the offensive. Is that a prelude for something larger, perhaps even a ground offensive going forward?
When you look at President Trump's leadership going back through his first term as president, he has been and remains very committed to combating and defeating the threat of Islamist terrorism that not only affects the United States, the American people, our own safety and security, but it is affecting so many people in different parts of the world. We can see different terrorist groups, the Houthis in Yemen being one of them, that President Trump has redesignated after President Biden took them off of the terrorist list, redesignated them appropriately as a terrorist organization, and taking action where the previous administration failed to.
Right.
The Houthis have been disrupting maritime trade and passage for a very long time, and no serious effort has been taken to stop that disruption. Our country and other countries should not be in a position to have to make a decision to reroute commerce going through that area simply because of the Houthi threat that exists. So President Trump has taken decisive action for our own safety, security, and prosperity. And I know we'll look to other affected countries, as there are many who are impacted by this, to similarly take action.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं, ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। तो आज ही अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक करें फ्री में पैसाबाजार.com पर। लोन की जरूरत कभी भी किसी को भी पड़ सकती है।
ठीक से एक्टिंग नहीं।
पैसाबाजार.com।
The India-US strategic partnership is one that's been developing now over the last several decades, and there's a great sense of optimism over here in India that it is headed in a particular direction. To tell us a little bit about that, and there are so many important global events taking place, Tulsi Gabbard with us, the Director of National Intelligence. It's wonderful to have you here in India, and thank you so much for speaking to us. In terms of the strategic relationship and the intelligence arrangements between India and the United States, to what extent is it premised on perhaps an expansionist or an expanding China and the Asia-Pacific region?
You know, the ties between our two countries, the United States and India, go.
I've been reporting on all issues, big and small, from Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, rest of South India, bringing you all the action, all that you need to know, all that you want to know.
The energy of Maximum City is infectious. I bring in that energy in our news coverage from financial capital, Mumbai.
Covering from the south. I've been reporting.
It isn't clear whether the 2-month clock begins from the time the letter was delivered or from when the negotiations start. But if Iran rejects Trump's outreach and doesn't negotiate, the chances of US or Israeli military action against Iran's nuclear facilities would dramatically increase. And with that, let's turn our attention to football, where India defeated Maldives in an international FIFA friendly held in Meghalaya's Shillong. Shillong actually made its debut as an international football venue. It will also host the all-important AFC Asian Cup 2027 qualifier against Bangladesh on the 25th of this month. But the biggest moment was India's all-time top scorer Sunil Chhetri's first match since announcing his return to international football. Ratnadeep brings you the details.
Excitement was writ large across Meghalaya's capital, Shillong.
India!
All path led to the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium, where India took on Maldives in a FIFA international friendly, Shillong making the debut as India's newest international football venue.
इंडिया को चीयर अप करने के लिए हम लोग आया हुआ है और स्पेशली सुनील छेत्री सर के लिए, क्योंकि छेत्री सर ऑलरेडी एक इंटरनेशनल में संन्यास ले चुका था, फिर दोबारा इंडियन टीम के लिए वापसी आया, तो उस चीज़ को एक जोश और जेन्युइन को एक ब्लू जर्सी में हम एक वो था, एक देखने का एक जोश था, तो उसके लिए आया है विटनेस करने के लिए।
हम लोग तो इंडिया का सपोर्टर है, तो हम लोग चाहता था मतलब इंडिया इसको मतलब जीत होना चाहिए, विन होना चाहिए।
The spotlight was firmly on the Blue Tigers, with legendary striker Sunil Chhetri making his much-anticipated return to international football out of his international football retirement. The match serves as a crucial test for both teams as they prepare for their AFC Asian Cup 2027 qualifiers, with India gearing up to face Bangladesh at Shillong again on 25th of March.
Captain Sunil Chhetri yet again.
While the stadium was full, India found an international football match victory after 489 days, with defender Rahul Bheke opening up the score with a header in the 35th minute.
Who said Shillong shaking with joy?
Followed by a goal in the second half for India by forward Liston Colasso, scoring in the 66th minute, making it 2-0 for India.
And the Blue Tigers roar in Shillong. One more time, one more cross towards Sunil Chhetri.
And later in the 76th minute, Sunil Chhetri found the back of the net, making it 3-0 for India, his 95th international goal.
Present, ever scoring.
Great numbers. And we know because the good thing is that he didn't have too many chances, but it's true that the cross of Liston was very, very good. It's the typical ball that you only touch the ball.
in his second.
Now all eyes on the India-Bangladesh AFC Cup qualifier match, where Bangladesh is going to field against India in the South Asia's most expensive footballer, Hamza Chaudhry, who has played in the English Premier League and has even represented England in under-21. With Nakul Rabha in Shillong and Ratndeep Chaudhary, Bureau Report, NDTV.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं, ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। आज ही जाइए पैसाबाजार.com पर और अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक कीजिए फ्री में, क्योंकि लोन की जरूरत किसी को भी कभी भी पड़ सकती है।
चल एक्टिंग थोड़ा भेल बनो।
ए आयो भाग पैसाबाजार.com।
How often have you turned away from debates that descend into endless fights? We bring you a show where every question is answered, where every debate finds its resolution, where every story finds its conclusion, where opinions collide but facts prevail, where stories unfold with insights and trust. When the noise ends, the last word begins.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं, ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। तो आज ही अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक करें फ्री में पैसाबाजार.com पर। लोन की जरूरत कभी भी किसी को भी पड़ सकती है।
ठीक से एक्टिंग नहीं।
पैसाबाजार.com।
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news is here.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं, ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। तो आज ही पैसाबाजार.com पर जाइए और अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक कीजिए फ्री में, क्योंकि लोन की जरूरत कभी भी किसी को भी पड़ सकती है।
बस एक्टिंग करा लो इनसे।
पैसाबाजार.com, क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक, आदत अच्छी है।
News is not just headlines, it is what impacts you. And news should never be mistaken for noise. What matters is the reality. Accurate, in-depth, and with the right perspective. For over 20 years, I have been a journalist, and never has clarity mattered more than now. At Newsnight, we go beyond the surface. We dissect the details, challenge the narratives, and bring you the unparalleled clarity you deserve in a world clouded by misinformation. We are bold, we are direct. Newsnight, for the news in your interest. Only on NDTV 24/7.
लोन मिलेगा या नहीं, ये आपके क्रेडिट स्कोर पे डिपेंड करता है। आज ही जाइए पैसाबाजार.com पर और अपना क्रेडिट स्कोर चेक कीजिए फ्री में, क्योंकि लोन की जरूरत किसी को भी कभी भी पड़ सकती है।
चल एक्टिंग थोड़ा भेल बनो।
ए आयो भाग पैसाबाजार.com।
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right, and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate. One of your primary concerns and one of your primary responsibilities is to deal with the threat of terror. And at the moment, we see a great deal of that out of Yemen. We see attacks on shipping taking place, and we see the United States being very much on the offensive. Is that a prelude for something larger, perhaps even a ground offensive going forward?
When you look at President Trump's leadership going back through his first term as president, he has been and remains very committed to combating and defeating the threat of Islamist terrorism that not only affects the United States, the American people, our own safety and security, but it is affecting so many people in different parts of the world. We can see different terrorist groups, the Houthis in Yemen being one of them, that President Trump has redesignated after President Biden took them off of the terrorist list, redesignated them appropriately as a terrorist organization, and taking action where the previous administration failed to.
Right.
The Houthis have been disrupting maritime trade and passage for a very long time, and no
A very good morning. You're watching NDTV 24/7. I'm Divya Vaza. We have a whole lot lined up for you over the next 1 hour, including the violence that erupted in Nagpur has left with over 90 arrests. 10 FIRs have been registered. We'll get you all the latest as far as the situation there is concerned, as well as the Shambu border, but also 2024 has recorded to be the hottest year ever. And the last 10 years have been breaking all kind of records. We'll get you all the details. First, let's get you the headlines. In the Nagpur unrest situation, curfew remains in place in some parts, and security review meet will be taking place today. There are 10 FIRs that have been registered in the violence that broke out in Nagpur. 90 arrests have been made so far. Punjab Police has cleared the Shambu border after 13 months. The Punjab Police have gone ahead and now detained the leaders of the farmers, and that is what we are hearing at the moment. We will keep getting you all the very latest from the Shambu border. A discussion on the working of the Home Ministry is expected in Parliament today, and later the Home Minister will also be